Part 178. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1771. People need money to raise them. They haven't started their careers yet, and they will only need to spend more money after they start their careers. Yang Haoyi said, your cousin is also a member of the Yang family. After all, Yang Rong is her own brother. How do you know that she is not willing to take the blame for Yang Rong? Yang Rong confesses his guilt. Yang's needs to pay too much. Father, Yang Heshu burned the letter in his hand, suddenly raised his head and interrupted him, do you know what I want to do? Yang Haoyi was taken aback, what? The management of each family in Jiangnan is too much. You can rest assured that in the future, not only the Yang family will be expelled from the interests of Jiangnan, but other families will also be expelled, so you don't have to worry that the Yang family will be excluded because of this, and today Yang's early withdrawal is only good for us, not bad. Yang Haoyi stared blankly at Yang Heshu, before he reacted. After a while, pointed at him with shaking hands and asked, are you crazy? Even the emperor would not dare to attack all the families together. You think that there are only us in the south of the Yangtze River? Aristocratic family. Then there are so many ministers in the court, even Zhao Qiagong's family, it is not clean in Jiangnan. Yang Heshu said, Father, people's livelihood is taken from the people and used by the people. Everyone uses Jiangnan, and even spends most of the extravagant expenses of the Jin state. Where do the people and emperors of the world put? After a long time, he was talking to him about the development and future of the family, but he was talking to him about the future of the country and the people. Yang Haoyi gasped in anger, got up and left. He said one more word to him, and he spurted the blood out of his heart. Yang Haoyi turned around and left the study, angrily went to the main courtyard. Halfway there, he suddenly became angry, his chest was full of anger, but he felt relieved. Days. There are so many thoughts in his heart, and he really wants to turn around and ask Yang Heshu again. To expel their respective powers from Jiangnan, to whom will the money be given? Emperor. It's all given to the royal family. Do you know how dangerous this is? But in his heart, he vaguely felt that the answer was not this. His son did not love the emperor as much as he showed. When the entourage saw his master sitting on the edge of the flower bed in a daze, he couldn't help worrying, Master, it's cold on the bricks. Only then did Yang Haoyi feel that his buttocks were cold, and he held his hand up. The entourage asked cautiously, the Dali Temple. Yang Haoyi closed his eyes, clenched his hand, and after a while he gritted his teeth, no matter, let someone go to Jiangnan, you can get as much as you can get back, and some industries that can be hidden will also be withdrawn. They are all hidden, and if they can't be hidden, they will be taken back. Save people first. The entourage responded and sent Yang Haoyi back to the main courtyard first. Then he took Yang Haoyi's palm and hurried out, and took people to Jiangnan overnight. As soon as he walked away, Qin went to report to Yang Heshu, second housekeeper brought a lot of dry food, he should be going far, look at the direction, he is going out of the east city gate. Yang Heshu nodded slightly and said, they have at least 10 days longer than the palace, and it depends on their ability how much they can hide. Qin couldn't help but ask, young master, won't you help them? Yang Heshu shook his head slowly, let them go according to their abilities. Prepare yourself. After the winter solstice, you will leave for Xiaoshu, and feel the situation inside and outside Xiaoshu. We may not have a good time when we leave Beijing this time. Qin responded, bowed, and retreated. Wan Mu on the side asked, Master, how much do we bring to Xiaoshu this time? You can bring as much as you can. This time, you may spend several years in the north. Yang Heshu laughed as he thought of the child, bring all the things and books I used when I was a child, and in the future, Brother Qi enlightenment can also be used. Yes. At this time, The emperor was meeting the prince, Yin Li, and Wei Ji in the small study. He handed the stack of things in his hand to Yin Li and Wei Ji, and said, "This is what the prince found out, let's take a look." Yin Li and Wei Ji separated in half, and began to scan them with one eye and 10 lines. The more they looked, the more shocked they became. Wei Ji couldn't help but stand up from the seat and asked, "Your Majesty, who did the statistics?" The emperor glanced at the prince and said, "Household." Yin Li put the things in his hands together and looked at the emperor. Wei Ji couldn't help but said angrily, "This is a scorpion." The emperor sighed and said, "Jiangnan is too far away, I can't reach it," and the Wang family, Kui family, and other families traveled south and operated in the south of the Yangtze River for more than 100 years. Wei Ji glanced at the thing in his hand and felt powerless. There is no way to do this. The emperor and even the imperial court are more powerful in Longxi and the north, and the important towns in the south of the Yangtze River. Whether it is political power or military power, most of them are in the hands of each family. Wei Ji suddenly thought of the king of Yizhu. Back then, he wanted to rebel, but all the money and food came from the south of the Yangtze River. Even the Duke of Yuxian, who was at home, heard some news. This shows the atmosphere of Jiangnan. Wei Ji simply raised his head and asked the emperor, "What is your majesty going to do?" Half of the world's salt tax comes from the south of the Yangtze River, not to mention that there are good trees and good fields there. If the richness of the south of the Yangtze River can be used for the people of the world, instead of only supporting a few families, the people of the world will be rich. Wei Ji and Yin Li looked at each other and knelt down, "But according to your majesty's orders." The emperor pointed to the prince and said, "I have decided to hand over this matter to the prince and Wei Cheng. This time, we will start with the Yang family. You will choose good talents and put people in. When the time comes, Jiangnan should be cleaned up." The prince also got up and knelt down, and responded together with Wei Ji. The emperor said to Yin Li, "Yin Iking is so tired, let's take care of the children of each family in the capital." This is what makes Yin Li attract firepower. Yin Li also bowed his head. Wei Ji still had a question, "Your Majesty, are the recovered fields, real estate, and salt works returned to the state treasury or private treasury?" If it is the national treasury, he is naturally willing to die, but if it is a private treasury. The emperor originally planned to put half and half of things like fields and salt fields into the Ministry of Households, but there are other messy things in real estate, such as books, paintings, antiques, all kinds of precious wood, and medicinal herbs. The class is stuffed into the private library. But seeing Wei Ji raised his head and staring at him, the emperor could only change his mouth and say, "Of course it's back to the treasury." Wei Ji felt relieved when he got the emperor's promise, pretended not to see the emperor's grievances, and got up and retired after saluting and accepting orders. The prince also wanted to go out and discuss with Wei Ji what to do about this, so he also resigned. When the people left, the emperor said to Yin Li aggrievedly, "Wei Ji is so annoying, and I didn't say anything about competing with the people for profit. It's useless to put those things in the treasury." Yin Li pretended not to hear, but asked, "Your Majesty, when will the trial at Dali Temple end? They are also well-known teachers." The emperor was distracted and said, "It will be almost the same when Xiaomu returns. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1772. The emperor felt that the manpower was not enough at this time. He looked at Yin Li and sighed, "Keep the festival, you have to take care of your health. I now have few people who can be used. Alas, it's a pity that your son is not in good health, otherwise he will take your place in the future, and the crown prince will not be unavailable." Yin Li said, "Your Majesty has been worrying too much. I have a lot of talented people in the Jin dynasty. You have opened the imperial examinations widely. In the future, there will only be more and more people who will use them. Dog, this minister can't share the worries for his majesty. The emperor suddenly thought about it. He ordered the things on the table and said, everything in this world is like this. Look at Yang Chao, it's a pity that he has a good son, and neither you nor me can compare to him in this regard. The emperor Tisk Tisk shook his head. Some looked down on each other, but a little envious. Yin Li thought about it for a while before thinking about it. This is because he thinks that Yang Chao is not as good as the two of them, but he has a good son. He also thinks that the two of them are much better than Yang Chao, but they don't have a good son. Yin Li was speechless for a while, and secretly said in his heart, it's a pity that the prince is not here, otherwise it will be another quarrel. The emperor was only a little sour, and soon he became self-balanced, and felt that his prince was not too bad now. Seeing that the emperor was back to normal, Yin Li continued, what is your majesty going to do with Yang Chao? What can I do with him? The emperor snorted coldly. The Kui, Wang, and Lu clan chiefs have all entered the palace, and there is no evidence to prove that he was involved in this matter, and the implication is nothing more than fines and confiscations. Yang Heshu over there. The emperor's eyes fell on the official document on the case, which was brought by the prince, and it was something Yang Heshu had found in the Ministry of Housing over the past year. If it weren't for these things he gave, the emperor would not know that the Ministry of Household had missed so many things from Jiangnan over the years, and his people in Jiangnan have been supporting each family. This is indeed a talent, and the prince also said that it can be used. He wants to go to Xiaoshu, then let him go to Xiaoshu, the emperor said. I wanted him to be a prefect, but now I think about it, lest he be pushed to the cusp of the storm, as he wishes. Choose a Zhongxian for him in Xiaoshu, stay for a few years, this matter fades away, and let him come back step by step. The emperor murmured, if he can keep his original intention, he will be the crown prince humorous in the future. Yin Li bowed his head in response, and felt a little envious of Yang Haoyi in his heart. The emperor was right, Yang Chao had average ability, but gave birth to a good son. If he was in better health, he would be no worse than Yang Heshu in time. This time, Yin Li was in a bad mood, but unfortunately the emperor didn't find out, so he dragged him and talked for a while before letting him go. Bai Shan returned home and took out a bag from the cloth bag on the horse's neck. Man Bao and Bai Erlang were very curious. I wanted to ask you, what is this? Bai Shandao, I don't know either, but senior brother Yang just gave it to me, saying that if we ask the Ministry of Household to allocate funds to local medical offices, it may be useful. The three of them went to the study together to read. Bai Shan opened it and found a stack of paper. He flipped through it and found that it was messy and scribbled. It looked like a draft. Man Bao took some to look at, and Bai Erlang looked at it for a while and asked, why is there such a mess here, is this money? He pointed to a number and asked. Bai Shan flipped through several sheets and said hesitantly, it seems that the salt tax collected by the Ministry of Household from a certain place, as well as the prices of some things, are messed up. Man Bao scratched his face and asked, shouldn't this thing be kept by the Ministry of Households? Isn't Brother Yang breaking the rules for us? Bai Shan paused and immediately understood. He put away all the manuscripts, ran to the door and looked left and right, and found that there were only 2 servants in the yard. He immediately went back to the house and closed the door, whispering, it must be a violation of the rules, don't tell anyone about this. Bai Erlang was stunned, since it's a violation of the rules, why did Brother Yang give it to us? Man Bao thought thoughtfully, because he wants us to do it. Bai Shan said, it's because we should need it in the future. Man Bao wrinkled his nose and said, this is not right. Bai Shan has already put away the things, yes, it's not right, so we can't tell others. Man Bao, that's not what she meant. Bai Shan asked, then what else can we do? Go to the censor's desk or go to the Ministry of Household to report Brother Yang. Man Bao thought for a while, then shook his head. After a while, the three of them sat together and sighed. Man Bao said, No wonder there are always people in the officialdom who bend the law for personal gain. We are bending the law for personal gain right now. Bai Shan nodded in agreement. Humanity really is a two-sided sword. Bai Erlang also admired, so it's so rare to have someone like Master Wei. He can not only be strict with others, but also be strict with himself. Man Bao and Bai Shan nodded together and sighed, it's too rare. Bai Shandao, the manuscript is too messy, and it is inconvenient to take it out. I will study it first, and then I will sort it out and show it to you. Because this might involve the imperial physician's office, Man Bao was still very interested, so he nodded. Because of the rare experience of strict self-discipline, after the holiday, Man Bao deliberately went to the 3 provinces to meet Mr. Wei by chance and pay his respects to him again. As a result, when Lord Wei was not there, the guard at the gate told her, "Your Excellency has taken a patrol errand," and went out. Man Bao looked up at the gloomy sky and asked, "Is this kind of sky patrolling? It's winter." "Who said it wasn't, but this is His Majesty's will, and Lord Wei has to go even if he doesn't want to." Man Bao could only regretfully go back to the palace. When they were eating at noon, Bai Shan sighed and said, "His Royal Highness has led other errands out of Beijing, and without His Royal Highness," Kong Jiju immediately stared at us, "all of us have been scolded for a long time." "A meal?" Man Bao asked curiously while eating, "What are you scolding you for?" "Scolding us for not being enlightened, and scolding us for not being diligent," Bai Shan said. Bai Erlang's shoulders collapsed, and then completely collapsed. The two of them sighed together. "Then Kong Jiju gave us a lot of homework." Bai Shan also stretched out his hand to show Man Bao his fingers. "I've been writing for a long time, do you think it's swollen?" Man Bao stared at his white and slender fingers for a while, then shook his head. "Where is it swollen?" Bai Erlang on the side stretched out his hand. "Look at me." Man Bao was surprised. "Why is yours swollen?" Bai Shan lowered his head and went to eat. Yin Or couldn't help but let out a loud voice. Bai Erlang said with grief and indignation, "He grabbed my homework from me and caught my hand." Bai Shan raised his head, frowned and said, "I grabbed my homework. It fell to the ground. When you went to pick it up, you pressed it on the table. There was a crack in the corner of the table, and you caught it yourself. You pushed the table, otherwise how could I get caught? Good night." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1773. Seeing that they were arguing, Man Bao hurriedly stopped between the two of them. "Okay, stop arguing, you are still brothers and sisters. By you must be trying to copy your homework again. Be careful, I will tell you to punish you." By was stunned, pointed at her and said, You are biased. It's all your junior brother, and I'm still injured. You don't comfort me, but you stand on his side." Man Bao glanced at his fingers and felt a little miserable, mainly in winter. It must be very painful, so he said, "I'll give you some medicine later." Bai Shan said, "Give it to me, let my senior brother take good care of him." Bai Erlang, who was still holding his finger up, trembled slightly, not willing to let Bai Shan get started. When Yin Or was full, he put down the bowls and chopsticks and said, "I'll come, do you have any medicine on you?" Keek has it there, but Man Bao still shook his head after thinking about it. "I'll go back and get it later." After eating, Man Bao took the 3 of them to get the medicine, while saying to Bai Erlang, "How old are you to copy your homework?" Bai Erlang insisted, "I'm not copying, I'm just looking at it to know how it was written." "You've been reading it for a quarter of an hour. I saw that you were going to copy it." "You asked Yin Or how to change the sentence so that it doesn't look like it was copied." Man Bao looked at Yin Or. Yin Or nodded. Bai Erlang stopped defending, just sighed sadly. Man Bao said to Bai Shan, "You can make up for him before going to bed at night." Bai Shan nodded. Bai Erlang's face became even more bitter. But no matter how bitter his face was, he did not have the suffering of those noble families. On November 15, when Man Bao took his seat again, Dali Temple made a judgment on Su Yu's case and made a report at the conference. Yang Ronghe Shui was convicted as the first offender, although he did not admit it, and although the evidence was not very sufficient, he was still considered to be aware of and involved in it. Of course, because he did not admit it, and there was no sufficient evidence, he was only sentenced to exile, and his property was confiscated. In addition, the detailed work searched in the palace this time, although failed to find the leaders of the bandits, but found some important people they are related to outside the palace. Dali Temple will continue to track down. At first, Man Bao felt that the sentence was too light, and it was completely muddy. Just when I was about to see if the prince would get angry, I remembered that the prince was not in the palace. So he could only walk out low-key with his head drooping after retreating, pretending that he had nothing to do with this matter. The backer is gone, she feels a little bit stubborn. But she soon learned from various sources that the verdict was not light at all, because the Ministry of Household was busy at the end of the year, and all the talents of Kong Wengan, Bai Shan, and the others were seconded to the Ministry of Household. A lot of things have been copied, and they need to be registered. So when everyone went back to Chongquen Museum to meet in the evening, a few people told Man Bao, this time Dali Temple and the Ministry of Household made excuses to copy back a lot of fields and properties, not to mention Yang Rong's family, and many others. Bai Shan said, it's all in a good position, or some zhuangzi, all because Dali Temple made an excuse, and then the Ministry of Household confiscated it. He shook his head and said, although we only do some documents in the Ministry of Households, I see that the people who went out to copy from the Ministry of Households have a lot of luck and resentment, and it is estimated that they will not be copied for long. The new dynasty has only been established for about 30 years. The bandit anger in everyone has not disappeared, and the ministers in the court will quarrel, let alone outside. As a result, within 2 days, Bai Shan came back happily and quietly told her, the Ministry of Household copied a lot of things from Yang Rong's house, not only many fields, but also the field salt farms and forest farms they set up in the south of the Yangtze River. Man Bao was puzzled, forget the land and salt fields, shouldn't the mountains and forests belong to the imperial court? They bought a lot of mountain forests from the local yamen. I heard that they are looking for the kind of ancient trees that are hundreds of years old. They are very valuable. Bai Shan already understood the meaning of the things Yang Hesha gave him, and he whispered. Said, the Ministry of Household has received so many new things, and the national treasury will definitely be filled a lot next year. Didn't you complain last time that when Swexi and Yang left, the money for the construction of the local medical office was difficult to get from the Ministry of Household? It's a good time. Now, with this money, it is much easier to convince the Ministry of Households to give the money. Man Bao's eyes brightened, and he pondered, Brother Yang is really well-rounded, and it is too wrong for him to go to Xiaohu like this. Bai Shan asked, what do you want? Man Bao said, it's a pity that the emperor has not been sick recently, otherwise I can recommend Yang Shuexian to him when I go to treat him. She just said this, and early the next morning, a servant from the Taiji temple came to invite her, Your Majesty, please ask Imperial Physician Zhou to come over. Man Bao's heart tightened, subconsciously thinking that the emperor knew what she said to Bai Shan yesterday, and he came to her to settle the account. As a result, she was about to leave with the servant, but the servant looked at her with an inexplicable expression, Don't Imperial Physician Zhou bring a medicine box? Man Bao reacted, and immediately ran to pick up the medicine box, and then asked, Is your Majesty ill? The emperor's physical condition cannot be inquired casually, but Zhou Man is an imperial physician, which is one of her duties, not to mention that she is going to see the emperor's doctor, so the waiter said, "Yes, today is a little uncomfortable." Man Bao breathed a sigh of relief, not just to settle accounts with her. As for why she had only said that she expected the emperor to get sick the night before, and the emperor fell ill the next day, Man Bao didn't want to think about it at all. When the weather is so cold, isn't it normal for people to eat whole grains and feel the weather is hot and cold and get sick? Man Bao carried the medicine box and ran to the Tai Chi hall to see the emperor. The emperor was still working normally in the study, but he sniffed from time to time, apparently contracting the cold. It's not very serious, it's not time to stop and rest, and since the last time the emperor didn't pay attention to a serious illness, he didn't dare to take this kind of minor illness too lightly. Therefore, as soon as he felt unwell, he asked people to go to the imperial hospital to invite someone, but thinking that Xiao Yuanzhen was too alarming for such a minor illness, and it was not used to call other imperial doctors, so he sent someone to call Zhou Man. Man Bao saluted the emperor and asked, "Your Majesty, do you want to see a doctor now?" The emperor thought about it for a while, and didn't want to criticize the book anymore, so he dropped his pen and walked to the couch behind the screen to sit down and let her see a doctor. Man Bao immediately followed up with the medicine box. The emperor took the initiative to roll up a sleeve and put his hand on the pulse case. He always felt that Zhou Man was too happy, and couldn't help asking, "What is this happy event?" Man Bao shook his head. The emperor asked, "Then why are you happy?" Man Bao restrained his expression and said, "No, Your Majesty, I am still distressed and worried that you are sick. How can you be happy?" The emperor just looked at her face and didn't speak, even though she admitted that she had restrained her expression, but in the eyes of the emperor, what kind of worries can a child of this age hide? He usually didn't want to pay attention, but when he noticed, the emperor could not hide the joy in her eyes. Gu Zhong brought the tea up and asked with a smile, could it be that imperial physician Zhou was happy to see De Yan? Man Bao immediately nodded again and again, "Yes, yes, I just saw His Majesty happy. I was in a trance due to diarrhea, and I almost said see you tomorrow. See you at 4 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl." Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1774. Emperor. He glared at Gu Zhong angrily, but didn't care much about him making excuses for her. He simply relaxed and leaned on the pillow, and asked, "Tell me, why are you happy to see me?" Man Bao felt that things had not been done yet, so he said, "Your Majesty, let me see a doctor first." She was so reserved and concealed, the emperor became more and more interested. Man Bao took his pulse and asked him some questions. He knew that most of the time he woke up in the morning with a cold. This kind of minor illness is not difficult to treat. Just take medicine, sweat, and avoid food for 2 days. Man Bao's service is very attentive. She even took out the needle bag to give him a needle. She probably knew that he was always at the desk, so his neck was uncomfortable. After the acupuncture for the treatment of wind cold, she also gave him a puncture. Neck, let him relax a lot. The emperor felt that Zhou Man had something to do. The emperor twisted his neck and felt that he was indeed relieved a lot, so his mood improved, and he was more leisurely to talk to Zhou Man. He said happily, "Tell me, what's the matter?" Man Bao sat upright, put his hands on his knees, and said solemnly, "Your Majesty, let me and you recommend a talent." The emperor thought she was talking about some folk doctor, nodded, and asked solemnly, "Who is he, what skills does he have?" Man Bao also said seriously, "He has the talent of Guanzhong, you don't need him to lose a lot." Emperor. He couldn't help tilting his head to look at Zhou Man carefully, and ask suspiciously, "Is it Guanzhong or not Bian Ke Hua Tuo or something?" "Brother Yang, how can he have the power of Bian Ke and Hua Tuo?" Man Bao followed him for a while, and quickly recovered, and said quickly, "I recommend Yang Heshu." Emperor, Yang Heshu is now an official in the court, Do you still need your recommendation? Man Bao sighed and said, but isn't he going to leave the capital now? Many people say that he is implicated by the Yang family, and he may have an uncertain future in the future. Man Bao sat on the stool and spoke to the emperor. Brother Yang is really powerful. He is the most powerful of all the officials I have ever seen, even more powerful than Lord Wei. The emperor was not convinced. Although he disliked Wei Ji in various ways, he did not think Yang Heshu was better than Wei Ji. Are you making a conclusion based on your face? Seeing that the emperor suspected her, Man Bao immediately put his face away and said, who said that? I've seen few people before, but I didn't know he was so good looking outside. The emperor always felt that there was something wrong with this statement, and he thought about it twice before he realized it. You don't think he is good looking when you meet few people, but you think he is good looking when you meet more people? What is this saying? Man Bao said, because Bai Shan and I look alike. She said confidently, Bai Shan and I have been the smartest, best looking, and whitest people in our group since we were young. Many people who get married like to invite us to be bed-rolling boys. At that time, my husband told us that there is a sky outside the sky. There are people out there, and there are more people out there who are smarter than us, and more beautiful than us. Let us not be conceited. Man Bao sighed. Afterwards, when we met Brother Yang, we felt that he was no worse than us. After seeing him a few times and talking a lot, we found out that he is not stupid than us. At that time, we thought that the outside world didn't know how many more powerful people are there. Who knows when they arrive in the capital? It turns out that Brother Yang is one of the most powerful people outside. Emperor. He always felt stuffed in his heart, but what she said was so humble that he couldn't even try to refute it if he wanted to. The emperor opened his mouth for a long time, and for the first time found that he could have nothing to say in front of others except when facing Wei Ji. The emperor did not join in. The atmosphere suddenly froze. One big and one small looked innocently at each other, and did not speak for a while. Man Bao asked hesitantly, Your Majesty, are you trying to anger Senior Brother Yang? Can I ask him for mercy? The emperor finally found his voice and asked, How old were you when you saw him? After thinking about it, Man Bao said, About 7 or 8 years old. The emperor felt comfortable, because he was still young and didn't know his longing. He was too lazy to talk to a child about this, so he waved his hand and said, Okay, I know, he is my subject. As long as he is talented, I will definitely use it. There is no need for you to come and recommend it again. Man Bao glanced at the emperor suspiciously, and emphasized again, Brother Yang is very powerful. He loves the people and will become the pillar of the country in the future. If you don't use him, it will not only be you, but the entire Jin dynasty. The emperor asked again, Isn't it really a face? Man Bao, am I that kind of person? The emperor touched his chin and thought, it seems that Yang Heshu is more powerful than he thought, and his charm is infinite. Man Bao was already babbling. He said a long time ago that his wish is that there will be no hunger for the people in the world, and everyone can live and work in peace and contentment. Are you an official with this kind of thinking? Everyone wants to make a contribution and make a career and honor their ancestors. Man Bao sighed and said, To tell your majesty, in fact, I am an official partly because of the imperial physician's office. I don't want to be an official, and half of it is to make my parents happy. Emperor. He nodded and said, Your reason is also very good. Man Bao shook his head, It's far worse than Senior Brother Yang. Sigh, I'm still addicted to the field of work, which is really inappropriate. After thinking about it, the emperor said to her, Yang Heshu, I wrote it down, the Ministry of Personnel has already decided to let him go out. As long as he does well, there will be more opportunities for promotion in the future. He said, since his heart is on the people's livelihood, he should go out for a few more years. Otherwise, he will always stay in Beijing and lack of experience. Even if he has the heart, he is powerless. When Man Bao heard this, his eyes lit up. So do you also recognize his talent? The emperor nodded, approved, approved. You can give me the next recipe and go back. It's not too early, it's time for lunch. He was afraid that if she didn't leave again, he would really be happy in person. It was the first time that Man Bao was kicked out, but he didn't care. He happily saluted the emperor and went out to write a recipe. Gu Zhong quickly brought the recipe in and showed it to the emperor. After reading it, he sent Zhou Man and Zhou Man to the Thai hospital to get medicine. Man Bao has to go back and file a case. She came and left happily, and even the emperor felt her happiness. He couldn't help asking Gu Zhong, will she wait to see me a long time ago, so see you now, are you so happy? Gu Zhong smiled and said, the Zhou imperial doctor is still young, so he doesn't hide his thoughts too much. It's better not to hide it. Like you, I don't even want to see your face. Gu Zhong could only laugh and confess his guilt. The emperor thought thoughtfully, so do you think she was expecting me to get sick early in the morning? Gu Zhong was stunned for a moment, and did not dare to laugh. The emperor also thought so, and quickly put the matter aside. He got up and said, let's go to the queen for lunch. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 1775. Where the emperor ate at the empress, the chamberlain also boiled the medicine and brought it. The emperor drank it obediently, put down the bowl and touched a piece of candy to eat. After taking the medicine, he thought of Zhou Man. He couldn't help laughing, and mentioned to the queen what Zhou Man said when he recommended Yang Heshu, and said happily, no wonder she can get along with Dalin, and she is so narcissistic, boasting. Yang Heshu just praised Yang Heshu, and he had to praise himself and Bai Shan together. The queen laughed too. However, she has a pure heart and doesn't hide her purpose of being an official. The emperor smiled slightly and shook his head. She doesn't think she is comparable to Yang Heshu, but I think she is not much worse than Yang Heshu. She is not. She said that she wished the people peace and prosperity, but she wanted to build medical offices in various places because of her kindness. Although the emperor thought she and Bai Shan and others were a little whimsical at first, if it wasn't for the empress who insisted on doing it, he would not be so moved in the end. But no matter how whimsical what they do it with kindness and filial piety. The emperor smiled and said, I am very pleased that she can bluntly say that she is this official partly to make her parents happy. After thinking about it for a while, the queen asked, I heard that a lot of things have been confiscated by the Ministry of Household recently. Everyone is holding their breath now. I don't know if they will become angry, but Zhou Man is involved. The emperor frowned and thought for a while, then said, didn't you tell Yin Li and Tang He to take her out before? The queen smiled and said, every family is not a fool. If you pick it out, they really won't see Zhou Man. The emperor sat cross-legged on the couch and asked, what did Zitong say? The queen said, the winter solstice is approaching, and it happens that this year is a bit special. Many old ladies are planning to go to Beijing to celebrate the new year. I am thinking of summoning the wives of various families before the winter solstice, and then let Zhou Man bring her several female disciples to everyone. Please be safe. She said, these old ladies have gone through wars and turmoil when they were young, and they have some old diseases. Let Zhou Man show them and relieve them. It is also a grace of the court. Isn't it beautiful to kill two birds with one stone? In the past 30 or 40 years, there were rebellions all over the place, and even the ladies of the wealthy families would be running around a lot. At that time, the medicine was not as good as it is now, so everyone was suffering from some illnesses. It's the queen, isn't it, because she was pregnant and running around when she was young, and she was afraid that she had so many problems? The emperor thought this method was also good. This can also be regarded as besieging Wei and saving Zhao. Seeing that he agreed, the queen smiled and said, then I will give Zhou Man and the ladies an edict. Let's go, Let's go, the emperor said with a smile. You are the mother of the country, and you are naturally in charge of these matters. The queen smiled. By the way, since you want to see the wives of various families, let them bring more girls into the palace to play, and they should also show the old fifth phase, the emperor said. I originally thought that the Lu family belonged to the family. The daughter is also good, but now it seems that it is better to change the family to marry. The queen knew that he was because of the Yang family. She sighed and asked, what kind of daughter-in-law do you want? The emperor pondered. The fifth is lively and playful, find him a docile and sensible one. He doesn't need to be too high, a girl, with a good personality and good upbringing, but it's best to read a few books. The emperor said, you know Zhou Man very well. Why? Isn't it because of studying since childhood? Even Confucius Jeju praised her in front of me, saying that she has the style of Confucianism. The queen laughed. She also felt that it would be good for girls to read and write more, so she knew what she knew, and planned to go back and find concubine Yang to give the fifth prince a good search. Thinking of concubine Yang Gui, the queen said to the emperor, after you have approved the book, go to concubine Yang to have a meal in the afternoon. She said, she has been uneasy since the incident about Yang Rong. You go and appease her, don't let her scare her sick. The emperor was not very happy and said, I didn't ask her about her sins. What is there to scare her? Last time she brought the fifth to ask for mercy, I didn't scold her, just ground her. The queen said warmly, she has always been timid, and she is still young, so the grounding is enough to frighten her. Now that Yang Rong's verdict has come down, why do you want to be a villain again? She didn't persuade her before because the verdict had not come down, and she was worried that the emperor's passing would affect the verdict of Dali Temple. But now that the verdict has been handed down, what's the point of scaring the mother and son again? The emperor murmured, she's almost ready to be a grandmother, how is she still young? The queen gave him a sideways look and asked, are you going to go? If you don't go, I will order her to come to Taiji Palace for dinner tonight. Okay, I'm going, can't I go? Man Bao put the emperor's pulse on file at the imperial hospital and asked Imperial Dr. Lu to sign a letter for her, then happily carried the medicine box and ran back to the Chongguan Museum for dinner. Imperial physician Lu watched her run away, shook his head and said, why is she happy that the emperor is sick? Dr. Zheng had a class at the imperial doctor's office this afternoon. He planned to go to the imperial doctor's office after dinner, so he asked Imperial Dr. Lu, would you like to go together? Imperial physician Lu has few classes this afternoon, and there is only one session near the end of school, so he said, you go first, I have to check the medicinal materials sent today and put them into the pharmacy. Imperial physician Zheng responded. At this time, they will be very envious of Zhou Man, because she doesn't have to do these chores. She has to go to the imperial medical office for classes, write medical books, and be ordered to see a doctor for the imperial family and relatives, but she just spends more time than them because she lacks these chores in the imperial hospital. Man Bao happily went back to the Chongguan Museum for dinner. She also had classes at the imperial physician's office in the afternoon, but she was not in a hurry to go out, so she went to take a nap after the meal. Department. This ability to pinch time is more accurate than all the imperial physicians in the imperial physician's office, so accurate that even Xiao Yuan Zheng couldn't help but look at him. Man Bao found a scroll, opened it, hung it on the wall, and straightened it for everyone to see. This is a picture of the meridians. From now on, we will start looking at the picture to identify the meridians and acupuncture points. The students in the first class of the physical therapy department were stunned. Although many of them had some basic knowledge, they still felt that Zhou Man's speed was too fast. Man Bao didn't think that when she was just studying medicine, teacher Mo taught her to identify the acupoints of the meridians, and then she found the acupuncture points, and he gave her an anthropomorphic model for her to pierce at will. Of course, it is impossible for her to give the students an anthropomorphic model. They can only try to find acupuncture points on themselves and their classmates, and even pierce each other's bodies later. So in order to make them less painful and quarrel with each other in the future, she decided to play the foundation well, so as to prevent them from tying the wrong acupoints in the future. It is basically impossible to completely eliminate it. She missed many times when she pierced on the anthropomorphic model. Later, when she tried on Bai Shan and the others, she even bleed. See you at 11 o'clock. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1776. Seeing that they were still in a daze, Man Bao clicked on the table and said, "What are you still doing? Quickly take out the pen and paper, let's start with the meridians and acupuncture points of the left arm." Everyone, including Zhou Liru, took out a pen and paper. Not everyone has a background in painting, and Man Bao didn't mind. He first taught them how to find various acupoints on the left arm, and briefly explained the meridians and acupoints. Then they began to teach them how to draw a hand, and then point out acupoints and draw meridians on the hand. Well, it's very uneven, even Zhou Liru painted his arm like a branch. But Man Bao didn't care at all, and he was accustomed to this and said, "Draw and draw, you will know it later, don't be discouraged now, first find the corresponding acupuncture points in yourself, and then find out from others." The corresponding acupuncture points are the most critical. Some students couldn't help raising their hands and asked, "Sir, can't we have a map of meridians and acupuncture points like this?" No, Man Bao cruelly rejected them and said, "I drew this picture, and it took a lot of time. There are only a few pictures in the Imperial Hospital, and they are all left by the former Imperial physician. I learned to draw by myself, so many students, how long does it take to draw so many pictures?" Man Bao even cheated in drawing this picture. Originally, she used the picture in the encyclopedia all the time. Later, teacher Mo also moved the humanoid model who specially marked the positions of the meridians and acupuncture points to the teaching room. The pictures in the encyclopedia were too beautifully made, and at first glance, the paper knew that it was not available in this world, so she copied one by herself. Exactly as drawn, very cheating. But this picture can be presented in front of people. When she added this picture later, Xiao Yuanzheng and the others also saw it. After Man Bao finished the class, she put away her baby pictures, put them in the painting tube after one roll, and then just recited them and left. Zhou Liru put down his pen and ran out to chase, "Little ant, can I go through the back door?" After thinking about it, Man Bao nodded and said, "Yes." Zhou Liru had a smile on his face, and before he could be happy, Man Bao said, "If someone else paints one, you can paint too. I'll ask your senior sister to teach you how to draw arms. She can draw flowers and arms, too. It's very good, the last time I saw her painting, I found that her head is also well drawn." Zhou Liru. Man Bao reached out and patted her little head, encouraging her, "You have to think in your heart, you can definitely do it, and then you will be more talented than usual, trust me." Man Bao turned around to find her other three disciples to get their homework, and after she had packed a lot of book baskets, she took them out of the imperial physician's office and took Rongxi's carriage back to the palace. When she returned to the palace, she received the queen's will, and asked her to prepare for the winter solstice to enter the palace to ask the ladies for peace. Man Bao was stunned for a moment and asked, "Then I won't have a holiday on the winter solstice? You must know that the winter solstice is a big festival, only inferior to the New Year's festival." Man Baodu and Bai Shan thought about how to spend these 5 days off. The female official who came to deliver the message paused and said, "This year's winter solstice is on the 26th day, and the empress will call for women to enter the palace on the 23rd day. It will not delay the reunion of Zhou imperial doctor and his family. The female official paused and said, but imperial physician Zhou, even if the empress has no purpose, you are also on duty at the imperial hospital, right? Man Bao said, Xiao Yuan is not letting me be on duty. When the female official heard this, she went back to report to the queen. After thinking about it, the queen said, Zhou Man is still young, and Xiao Yuan is sympathetic. If you are not on duty, you will not be on duty. The female official admonished, Niang Niang, Zhou Man is the only female imperial physician in the palace. She is in the palace for the convenience of the concubines and princesses in the palace. She has been living in the Changguan pavilion all the time, so it is not difficult to announce her. Usually, it's okay for her not to be on duty for 10 days, but she shouldn't be on duty for a big festival like this. I heard that Xiao Yuan was looking for her last time and couldn't find her, because not only was she not in the palace, but she also left the capital without reporting. Her Majesty and the Empress love her, and she should abide by the rules. Seeing that she brought out the rules of the palace, the queen smiled and said, in that case, this palace asks Aunt Chang to talk to the imperial hospital and arrange for the Zhou Man festival to be on duty. So the next day, when Man Bao went to the emperor's follow-up consultation and returned to the Taiyuan hospital to enter the pulse file, he heard the bad news from Xiao Yuanzheng. She looked at Xiao Yuanzheng, who was gloating at misfortune, and asked incredulously, didn't you say that I am young and can be off duty? Xiao Yuan was trying his best to restrain the happy look on his face, and said to her, yes, but the empress said that this is the rule in the palace, and you don't need to be on duty on weekdays. For big festivals such as the winter solstice and the New Year's Day, let it go. The leave is too long, you can't justify it if you are not on duty, and the people in the palace and the court should have opinions. Man Bao frowned, lowered his voice and asked, is someone trying to deal with me behind the scenes? Xiao Yuanzheng gave her an approving look and lowered his voice, this is just a small matter, we just follow the rules, don't worry, after Suyu, no one in the palace dares to reach out to harm anyone. At least not in the short term. So, we have to abide by the rules and don't let people find out what's wrong. Xiao Yuanzheng resumed his usual tone of speech, however, remembering that you are young, don't worry, the guard time arranged for you depends on front or back doesn't divide your vacation. Seeing Man Bao's bitter face, he comforted her with a smile and said, don't worry, it's only your turn to be on duty when you have such a long vacation, and it's not your turn to be on duty if you only take 2 or 3 days of vacation. Man Bao was in a better mood, and then began to say good things, Xiao Yuanzheng, I can't stay up late because I'm still young, you wait for me to grow up and grow taller, and you can arrange for me to be on duty in the future. Rest for you. Xiao Yuanzheng just looked at her height and sighed, then there's still more to wait, I'm not in a hurry. Man Bao. Xiao Yuanzheng told her with a smile, eating more beans will help you grow taller, or drinking more goat milk is also good, don't you manage the farm yourself, raise some sheep in the village, and have goat milk every day? Drink. Man Bao sighed, when I get home tomorrow, I'll ask my sister-in-law to stew beans for me. Xiao Yuanzheng said enviously, tomorrow, it's my turn to be on duty. It was only then that Man Bao remembered and told him, Xiao Yuanzheng, go to show your majesty tomorrow, I think he has already stopped symptoms today, but he should take another day's medicine. There was nothing trivial about the emperor's body, and Xiao Yuan responded. The two talked for a while, and when Man Bao was about to leave, someone from the East Palace came, the little emperor's grandson is a little feverish, and the crown prince asks Imperial Dr. Zhou to come and take a look. Xiao Yuanzheng said to her, the child has a fever, it can be mild or serious, you and Lu Tai can go and see. Good night. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1777. Manbao and imperial physician Lu went to see the little grandson in the East Palace together. He was obviously sick for the first time, and the crown princess and the entire East Palace were anxious and worried. Not to mention them, imperial physician Lu was a little nervous, for fear that the little grandson would be killed again. But after the two carefully checked, imperial physician Lu glanced at Zhou Man and determined that it was a normal illness. It was normal for a child to be ill with insufficient yang energy and sudden cold weather. After seeing the little emperor's grandson, imperial physician Lu went to see the nurse who was feeding the little emperor's grandson, and after confirming that there was nothing wrong with them, he discussed the prescription with Zhou Man. The medicine was given to the wet nurse, and after they took it, the little grandson could eat the medicine. Because it is too difficult to feed children medicine, and the dosage is not easy to control. Manbao rubbed his hands to warm up, and then went to press his back. The little emperor, who was crying so badly, was comfortably pressed and gradually stopped crying. He looked at Manbao with his wet eyes open. Manbao smiled at him, and lightly pressed his back with one hand, and raised his little nose with the other. Then he pressed on him in an orderly manner. Imperial physician Lu looked curious, stepped forward and looked at it for a while and asked, "What kind of massage is this?" "This is what I have learned. It is not easy for children to have needles. This method can be used for some minor colds and illnesses." Imperial physician Lu looked at it carefully. Manbao also did not avoid him, and directly told him where to press, and also let the nurse beside him remember that if the little emperor's nose was seriously stuffed, he could press it like this. It is very uncomfortable to have a blocked nose, and the child can't speak when he is young, so he can only cry when he is uncomfortable. The crown princess kept watching, and listened attentively. When they finished pressing, and the palace servants went down to boil the medicine, she looked at Manbao and gave her a wink. Manbao said to imperial physician Lu, "You go back by yourself, and I stay with the East Palace." Imperial physician Lu took out the pulse case he had just written and asked her to sign it, and then he also signed his name in front of Zhou Man. "I'll take it back and put it on file." Manbao nodded and watched Imperial Dr. Lu walk away before turning around to see the crown princess. The crown princess had already embraced the quiet little grandson, and said to Manbao, "I still feel a little hot when I touch it. Does he really need to take medicine?" Manbao comforted him, "Wait after he's had milk to see the situation. He doesn't have a serious fever now, so he doesn't need to take medicine. If the fever doesn't subside in the afternoon, and the birth doesn't go up, then wait." Manbao said, "Don't worry, Niang, I'm in the Chongguan pavilion. You ask the servants to pay attention to the temperature. If there is any change, let them call me." The princess nodded sadly and sighed, "The child is sick, and the prince is not in the capital." Manbao already knew that the prince and Wei Ji were going to Jiangnan, because I heard that all the Yang Rong family's things in Jiangnan had been copied, including some of Yang's businesses, which were previously run by Yang Rong, and were also implicated and confiscated. She could only comfort the princess. "The child will have a fever and cough before the age of 8, so she said that the child is difficult to raise. She said, this is just the beginning. When he starts to grow teeth in July and August, the illness will become more frequent." The crown princess was stunned and asked, "What should I do then?" Manbao, "On weekdays, we can only raise the child well, let him exercise, and if he is strong, he will be less sick." After thinking for a while, she said, "If you have time, it's better to go to the Taiji Palace and talk to the Empress. She has given birth to several children, so she should have some experience." Mainly because she saw that the crown princess was too anxious, and she had been killed many times, so she was so suspicious and uneasy. The princess nodded thoughtfully. As soon as she saw that Manbao had collected her things and was about to leave, the crown princess took her hand and said, "You have to come and see Yingnu and I often. The prince is not there, and there is no one around me to talk to." Man Bao was entangled, she was going to rest tomorrow. But looking at the expectant look of the crown princess, Man Bao still nodded. Forget it, come over tomorrow to see the child before leaving the palace, and then come to the palace to have a look. The winter solstice is approaching, the weather is getting colder and colder, and it is almost the coldest time of the year. Mr. Zhuang has already prepared to keep his body in peace. In these 2 days, he did not even talk much about the classic of filial piety in his class, but talked about the winter solstice. The old Zhu also brought Zhou Dalan's family back from Zhuangzi, and was shopping for the winter solstice. Even Shai Zilang and Xiang Mingxiu, who were reselling wool goods, came back from outside to prepare for the winter festival. Man Bao and the others went out of the palace, and Mrs. Lu also restricted them from going out to play. It's cold, so before the winter solstice, you can cultivate yourself and play at home. They don't even ask for their schoolwork anymore. Even the lecturers in Chongguan Hall did not give them any homework, because around the winter solstice they had to rest in peace. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang relaxed for a while. Not only them, but also Zhou Lixiu and others who were also in school had no homework, so after getting up early in the morning, everyone sat in a daze after strolling in the garden. Man Bao was quite busy, so she went out to the palace early in the morning to see the little emperor's grandson. He was in good spirits, and he was no longer burning. He had just finished breastfeeding and was not sleepy, so he lay in the nurse's arms and played with bubbles. Man Bao wiped his face with a handkerchief with a look of disgust, and asked him, "Did you also know that the festival is coming, so it's good to be safe and healthy?" The little emperor obviously didn't understand, so he slowly spit out a bubble, and then kicked his legs to cheer himself up. The nurse smiled and said, "Little Huang soon likes imperial physician Zhou, it's rare to see him so spirited." The crown princess also smiled and said, "Yes, His Majesty came to see him last night, and he was also happy, and he didn't know how he was chosen." Man Bao pinched his fingers and said, "Huh, is he going to have a full moon?" The crown princess smiled and nodded, "Tomorrow, I wanted to do a big game, but he was sick. Didn't you say that the child is weak and can't see too many strangers, and don't go to places that are too strange? So I will talk to you." The Queen Mother said that it would be good for Manu to have a meal at her own house, and then wait until the 100 days to do it. The main reason is that the prince is not here, she feels a little empty in her heart, and her childbirth is calculated by someone. Now that the child is still young, who knows if there will be people who will take advantage of it. Man Bao nodded, agreeing with her decision. The two chatted around the little grandson for a while, and Man Bao showed it to the two nurses again, and went out of the palace after confirming that he was fine. The next day to enter the palace is November 23rd. When Man Bao went to the imperial physician's office, he specifically ordered Dr. Lu and said, "Come in the palace early tomorrow morning, and I will take you to ask for the ping and pulse for the ladies and the old ladies." Dr. Lu responded, glanced at Zheng Gu and Zheng Xiao who were standing aside, and asked, "Master, what about them?" Man Bao glanced at them and sighed, "They can't do it, otherwise it would be good for the women to ask the imperial physicians to see them." Alas, the prejudice is not only between male patients and female doctors, but also between female patients and male doctors. 3 apprentices. But there's nothing wrong with this, Man Bao cheered up just for a moment. This just shows our role, and it gives us a place to be useful, so that it won't be passed on in the future. There are as many men and women as there are men in this world, and naturally the same is true of illness. Man Bao encouraged Dr. Lu, and after seeing Zheng Gu and Zheng Xiao on the side, she encouraged them together, "Don't be discouraged, you can't treat the old ladies, I can give the emperor, princes and those old ladies and the like to see a doctor." Zheng Gu and Zheng Xiao, they are not discouraged, okay. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1778. A lot of major events happened in Dajin this year, and every single one can make a difference in that year, but these events all happened together this year. First, Hoji's rebellion and the murder of the crown prince involved Prince Gong, which broke the situation of constant struggle between dragons and tigers. Prince Gong was imprisoned in the palace, and the crown prince temporarily won. Then the princess who had been infertile for many years became pregnant, and it was rumored that the prince's infertility had been cured. Then the crown princess gave birth to a child safely, but because of Suyu, each family was involved. Now each family has to take a step back in the face of the royal family, for fear that the royal family will tear its face. It is true that the emperor will have a hard time defeating the various alliances, but in the same way, it will never be easier for each of them. Therefore, even in a remote corner, some old ladies who don't come to the capital often can't help but come to the capital to spend the winter solstice this year. Of course, they all found good reasons to congratulate the empress and the crown prince and concubine. No matter what everyone thinks about the East Palace, everyone is very harmonious on the face. When they see the queen, they will go out as if they don't want money. It is a matter of universal celebration for the prince to have a son. I heard that the little emperor's grandson is very smart, and he looks like a filial child. Although there is no direct relationship between intelligence and filial piety. Man Bao picked up Dr. Lu early in the morning and went to the apse of Tai Chi Hall, where he was sitting in the side hall drinking tea and taking a nap. She got up a little early today. Hearing the lively voice from the main hall, Man Bao lifted his eyelids and looked out. Seeing that no one came to call her, he continued to sit cross-legged on the big chair covered with mattresses and closed his eyes. Dr. Lu sat on the side with an upright posture, and was nervous for a while, but when she turned around and saw that the master seemed to be asleep, she was speechless for a while. From time to time, Man Bao opened a slit to look outside, and when she saw her apprentice looking at her, she said, "You got up earlier than me, so let's take a look. I heard that there are a lot of people here today." Dr. Lu said, "Master, I'm not tired, why don't I check something?" Man Bao glanced at the medicine box she brought, and simply put down his legs and put on his shoes. "Bring the medicine box over and let me see, how many trocars did you bring?" Dr. Lu said, "According to your instructions, I applied for 10 sets with the Imperial Physician's office." Man Bao nodded. The used needles should be boiled and sent back to the Imperial Physician's office. After they checked here, there was nothing wrong, so they continued to sit in the side hall and waited for a while before being called over. The queen also finished chatting with them, and was talking about the newly opened Imperial Physician's office. Most of the old ladies and wives present here put a person in the Imperial Physician's office, so they knew about it. The Empress said, "Your Majesty and the Empress Dowager have worked hard for the old ladies. For many years, they have given birth to children for state officials, and they have taken care of the housework. They have suffered a lot, so today, I specially ordered Imperial Dr. Zhou and her apprentice Lu Yingnu to show everyone. Except for Princess Jaomi, Mrs. Kui and several other old ladies who had never seen Zhou Man, everyone else had seen her and even invited her to see a doctor. They didn't feel much about it, they just bowed slightly. Thank you to the Queen Mother and the Queen." However, Mrs. Kui had heard about this Imperial Dr. Zhou earlier, so Zhou Man couldn't help but look over when he led Dr. Lu into the hall. Man Bao and Lu Yunu put down the medicine box, and first greeted the queen and greeted the old lady and the ladies who were sitting in the hall. Coincidentally, Mrs. Yang Ho was also there. Even if the Yang family is implicated now and needs to live a low-key life, she is also Yang's clan wife and Mrs. Ho, so the queen summoned the wives of various families, and she was among them. When she saw Zhou Man, she lowered her eyes and didn't plan to ask her to see a doctor. The Empress waved Zhou Man's gift and smiled, "Emperor Zhou, please ask your ladies for their pulse." Man Bao responded and looked at the ladies. Seeing that everyone was silent, he planned to look from the front to the back. Princess Jaomi took a look at the queen, and then said, "The imperial Dr. Zhou came to show me first." Manbao responded with a smile, and took the Dr. Lu to ask for Princess Jaomi's pulse. Of course, it's impossible to talk about very private illnesses in the public eye. Manbao is also sensible, and he mostly talks about common illnesses and usual precautions. For example, is it difficult for the princess to sleep at night from time to time? She still has a dry mouth and feels that no amount of water is enough. Princess Jaomi thought it was very strange, and nodded again, and then Manbao would give her some precautions. If she didn't need to change clothes, she only needed to puncture her hands, feet, head, neck, and other places where it could be exposed, and she would give her a few punctures. These old ladies are much older than the queen, and they are all people with children and grandchildren, so naturally they have many problems. Not to mention gynecological diseases, there are many common diseases in the elderly alone. Anyway, today is the Ping'an pulse. I looked at it carefully, but I didn't. I just picked up some common symptoms and mentioned them, and then pierced some needles. If other serious diseases were found, Manbao adhered to the principle of keeping patients confidential. Hint 1 or 2, let the other party go out and see the doctor again. Of course, they can also invite her if they come. Manbao took Dr. Lu to look down from the top. The symptoms were accurate and thoughtful. Even Mrs. Kui, who was a little scornful at first, couldn't help but give Zhou Man a solemn look. The queen bowed her head and drank tea, very satisfied with it. She gave Zhou Man the chance, but she had to seize it. Many old ladies had a better impression of Zhou Man, and Mrs. Lu took her hand and smiled, "When you leave the palace, come to my house when you have time. My grandson-in-law is also pregnant, I think I want you to show her." The queen smiled and said, "Mrs. Lu is the second great-grandson, right?" Mrs. Lu nodded with a smile, "Yes, the first one is a great-granddaughter. I don't know if I can have a great-grandson this time." The queen smiled and said, "Blossom first and then bear fruit. The more flowers that bloom in the front, the more fruit will be born later. That's the reason. If it's a great-granddaughter, the two sisters will be companions." Manbao also responded with a smile, and then went to ask for the pulse of the next old lady. Dr. Lu has been keeping an eye on the time, and guessing that the time is almost up, she will go to pull the needle for the lady whose time is up, or go to turn the needle. The cooperation between the master and the apprentice was very fast. Although there were many women, they still finished it before noon. The queen was very satisfied, nodding and letting Zhou Man retire. Mrs. Kui smiled and said, "I don't know if the female doctor raised by the Imperial Physician's office will have the ability of Zhou Imperial Physician in the future." The queen smiled and said, "They are also taught by the Zhou Imperial Physician and other Imperial Physicians in the Imperial Hospital. Ben Gong thinks that some of them must be better than the blue." Manbao, who walked out of the main hall, exhaled a breath and said, "I still like to see one patient by one patient when seeing a doctor. In this way, many questions cannot be asked in public." Dr. Lu asked, "Master, I think you have been taking a long time to check the pulse of Mrs. Kui. Is there any problem with her?" Manbao lowered his voice and said, "I'm not quite sure. I think she has bruises that haven't gone away, and her pulse is a little bad. Unfortunately, she has put on powder today, and her face can't be seen clearly. See you at 9. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1779. But in front of people, Manbao didn't ask much. But she had already hinted at the other party and asked her to look at the doctor again. She felt that there were no simple things for those women. In front of them, she was almost like a child, so she didn't realize that they didn't understand. She felt that she had fulfilled her duty, so she happily led Dr. Lu to the palace gate and said to her, "You can go back to class for half a day, tomorrow will be the winter holiday." Dr. Lu responded and stepped back after saluting. Man Bao returned to the Chongquen Museum, but unfortunately she will be on duty tomorrow and will not be able to leave the palace. This is the first time Man Bao is on duty at the Thai hospital. In order to make it easier for people to call, she had to bring her own bedding and go to the Thai hospital to sleep for a night. There was no way. Although there were ready-made ones in the Thai hospital, she didn't want to use what Xiao Yuanzheng had used. Xiao Yuanzheng also understood that she was a girl, and asked someone to clean up a small room for her alone. Coincidentally, Imperial Physician Lu stayed in line with her for one night. At night, a lot of lights were turned off in the palace, and only 2 lights were on in the Taiyuan hospital. The medical assistants gathered everything together, and then brought the brazier and sat in the Taiyuan hospital's office to talk. Imperial Physician Lu found a small bag of soybeans out of nowhere, grabbed a small handful and put it on the side of the stove. After roasting for a while, he invited Man Bao, who was stunned, to eat it together. It was the first time for Man Bao to attend a night party like theirs. He picked 2 soybeans to eat, and nodded, "It's almost the same as the ones my sister-in-law fried." Imperial Dr. Lu said with a smile, "Dr. Zheng has a good mouth. If you happen to be on duty with him, he will roast the jerky." Man Bao thought about it, "Then do I have to prepare something for night duty next time?" Imperial Physician Lu said cheerfully, "You are only on duty a few times a year? You don't need it. She only has to be on duty during the long vacation. First, to prevent emergencies in the palace that need her, and second, to block other people's mouths." He smiled and said, "You are still young, so you don't have to cook with us, just eat and rest for a while and then go to sleep. What about you, Imperial Physician Lu?" Imperial Physician Lu said with a smile, "I'll stay for another 2 hours, and I'll go to bed if I have nothing to do. There are also medical assistants. If there are patients in the palace, they will call us." The medical assistants on the side also quickly said that they would be on duty separately and would not miss a little movement. Everyone is a person who is used to being on duty, and they will not be dereliction of duty in these matters. Man Bao nodded, and then ate beans with them around the stove, talking by the way. Imperial Physician Lu mainly talked about the students in the Imperial Physician's office. There are a few students who are really good. They have already studied a lot outside. They can be divided into another class. After 2 or 3 years of teaching, they will be able to graduate. He said, "Xiao Yuan and I are thinking that it is not good to delay them for too long, so we want to bring one of them to teach by our side, so that the apprenticeship will be faster, and they will be able to help in the next year." As soon as Man Bao rolled his eyes, he recommended her apprentice, "Dr. Lu, what do you think of my Zhengku and Zheng Xiao?" "Dr. Lu. They want to bring people with them to teach, which means accepting apprentices, that is, the kind of apprentices who kowtow and serve tea to get started." "What do you mean by introducing your apprentices to them?" Imperial Physician Lu simply commented and said, "Zhenggu is really good, he can be a teacher outside. Zheng Xiao, he has to learn for a few more years." But he didn't say anything. Man Bao looked at him suspiciously, and Imperial Physician Lu raised his eyes and glanced at her, and Man Bao understood immediately, "Are you going to accept apprentices in the Imperial Physician's office?" Imperial Physician Lu coughed lightly, "I don't have any apprentices either, isn't it reluctant to meet Liang Ke?" In fact, they didn't even think about accepting apprentices from outside. After all, each of them had a lot of children and nephews, and there were a lot of things in the hospital. It would be very laborious to teach them. It can be seen that Zhou Man has 4 disciples, one is his own niece, not to mention the other 2. Zheng Xiao's aptitude is less, but Zhenggu and Sunyang have made great progress. Not to mention Zhenggu, Lu Sunyang was his own granddaughter, and he watched her progress at a speed visible to the naked eye. But now, she has been able to go to the back house of a wealthy family to see a doctor, and is honored as Dr. Lu, but his son and her uncle's reputation outside the home are even worse. Zhou Man's rapid development of Ji Shitang still gave them a sense of urgency, so they urgently needed some outstanding disciples. Man Bao didn't feel anything, and nodded in agreement. Okay, then Zhenggu and the others can only be brought by me. Imperial Dr. Lu breathed a sigh of relief, while Man Bao sighed, I don't have enough time. Imperial Physician Lu laughed, you're saying that you don't have enough time now. When the local medical office opens, it will only get busier. Speaking of this, Imperial Physician Lu thought of something, lowered his voice and asked, I heard that Lord Yang is going to be released, is it true? In this regard, the Taiyuan hospital is a little slower than the ministers in the court. Man Bao nodded, it's already 8 out of 10. Imperial Physician Lu sighed, I don't know which adult took over. The Imperial Physician Office has just opened, but I don't dare to cut off the funds, otherwise I will lose all my achievements. Why did the Imperial Physician's Office in the previous dynasty gradually disappear after a few years of operation? Not because of lack of money. The last emperor asked for money in the war, and the Ministry of Household directly cut off the supply of the Imperial Physician Office. Later, the Imperial Physician Office persisted for 2 years, and finally released the students, and the Imperial Physician Office existed in name only. This is also one of the reasons why Xiao Yuanzheng and Imperial Physician Lu were most worried when Zhou Man said he would open the Imperial Physician Office. What's more, she wrote not only the Imperial Physician's Office, but also the expansion of the local physician's office, which will only cost more than the previous dynasty. When Man Bao heard the words, he was worried for a while, and he didn't know if the things that Brother Yang gave would allow them to dig out the money from the Ministry of Household. But for money matters, the boat will naturally go straight to the bridge, and Man Bao is very fond of it. So she comforted Imperial Physician Lu, it's all right, there are the Emperor, the Queen, and the Crown Prince above. The sky is falling and there is a tall one on the top. It has already cost so much to build the Imperial Physician's Office and the Physician's Office. She said firmly, I don't believe that he doesn't feel bad when he thinks that the money in front of him is wasted. As long as he feels bad for the money in front of him, he will continue to invest it. It's like gambling money. Dr. Lu. The medical assistants on the side were also stunned, and then lowered their heads silently, as if they didn't hear anything just now. The two chatted a lot around the stove, and the medical assistants also listened to a lot of secrets with relish. Then Man Bao's biological clock time was up, and he couldn't help yawning. Imperial Physician Lu looked at the time and said to her, go wash and sleep, I'll sit for a while. Man Bao asked, is there a high chance of seeing a doctor at night? Imperial Physician Lu thought for a while and said, there will always be 1 night out of 3 nights. I think this evening should be safe and sound, mainly because the 3 empresses have been a little uncomfortable in the past 2 days. Square. Therefore, they all know the patients in the palace. Man Bao nodded and went to sleep at ease. See you tomorrow, see a movie tonight. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1780. Dr. Zhou, Imperial Dr. Zhou. Man Bao suddenly opened her eyes and woke up from the bed. She looked up at the dark and unfamiliar place in front of her, and it took a while to realize that she was in the hospital. When Man Bao heard the knocking on the door continuing, he quickly lifted the quilt and got up, grabbed a coat and put it on, and went to open the door. The medical assistant who knocked on the door lowered his head after only one look, and said quickly, Dr. Zhou, the Queen Mother's palace is calling for someone, and Imperial Dr. Lu asks you to come along. Man Bao responded, closed the door, scratched her head, and then turned to get dressed. She took the time to look at the system time, and found that it was past 2 in the morning, and it was just over. Oh my God, It was the coldest time of the day. Man Bao casually tucked his hair, then took off the cloak on the shelf and put it on, feeling warm enough to go out with the medicine box. Imperial Physician Lu just got up, but he was already prepared. In addition to his medicine box, he also brought emergency medicine. The maid in the Queen Mother's palace was standing by the door, and seeing that Zhou Man had also arrived, he hurriedly carried a lantern to show them the way. Man Bao asked, "What's wrong?" The maid did not speak, and Imperial Physician Lu said, "Cough, I see blood." Man Bao was surprised. Did the Queen Mother get sick before? Imperial Physician Lu said, "Xiao Yuan has been watching, and I take medicine every day. I didn't expect to cough up blood tonight. Coughing up blood is not a good sign." Man Bao also knew that the pace was faster. When the two arrived in the Queen Mother's palace, many lights were already lit inside and outside the palace. The two stomped their feet at the door and waited until the coldness on their bodies subsided a little before entering. Man Bao also untied the cloak and gave it to the palace maid. The Queen Mother was lying in the quilt with a pale face, coughing from time to time, and Man Bao was worried when she heard it, as if she was about to cough out her heart and lungs. After the two saluted, Imperial Physician Lu came forward to ask the doctor, gave up his seat to Zhou Man after a while, and then stepped aside to ask the maid who was serving the Empress Dowager, "When did Niang cough?" Man Bao felt the Queen Mother's pulse, sighed slightly in her heart, and looked at her face again, and soon went to see the blood on the veil with Dr. Lu. The two looked at each other and both comforted the Queen Mother softly, and then withdrew to discuss the condition. Imperial Physician Lu said, "It is difficult for medicinal stones to take effect immediately, and acupuncture." Man Bao said, "It can relieve one or two." Imperial Physician Lu nodded, then stretched out his pen to prescribe, and prescribed 3 prescriptions in a row to discuss with Zhou Man, "Which one do you think is better?" Man Bao looked at it and clicked one, "This one should use Chehu instead, be gentler." Imperial Physician Lu thought for a moment and then nodded, "All right, what acupuncture method are you going to use?" Man Bao mentioned it, because she wanted to enter the file. She simply wrote down the acupuncture method, and the two discussed it. The Queen Mother coughed very badly, and it was because it was so difficult to fall asleep and coughed up blood that she called the imperial doctor temporarily. After Man Bao entered, the palace maids put down the heavy curtains, and the big palace maid began to help the Queen Mother remove her clothes, and the Queen Mother was uncomfortable lying on her stomach for needles. At first, the Queen Mother couldn't hold back her cough, but after a few injections by Man Bao, the Queen Mother's breath became much smoother, and the sound of snoring in her lungs became less. Not only the Empress Dowager, but also the maids serving in the Empress Dowager's palace also felt the benefits of having a female doctor in the palace for the first time. Acupuncture is indeed an instant and useful medical technique. If no imperial doctor dared to use it on the Queen Mother, the Queen Mother would not allow the imperial doctor to offend her body. But now there are women doctors that are different. The Queen Mother's cough was not so severe anymore, the palace was in a hurry, and the tired maids and servants also felt a little relieved. The Emperor and Empress arrived only halfway through Manbaoxingjian. The couple were both temporarily woken up. The Emperor stayed outside to ask Imperial Physician Liu's condition, while the Queen came in lightly. Seeing that Zhou Man was getting acupuncture, she raised her hand to stop the palace servant who was about to salute, and did not ask anyone to disturb her. After Man Bao finished a set of acupuncture, after pulling out the needle, he said to the Empress Dowager, who was still a little uncomfortable, "The maiden turns around, and I will give you another set of acupuncture." The Queen Mother was helped by the palace maid to get up, but she felt a little inconvenience and almost fell back on the bed. The Queen hurried forward and turned the Queen Mother over with the palace maid. Man Bao only saw the Queen and hurriedly wanted to salute. The Queen helped the Queen Mother lie on the bed, and then said, "Don't be too polite, heal the Queen Mother quickly." Man Bao responded and pinched the needle again to give the Queen Mother a needle. This time, it was in front of her. The Queen Mother saw the long needle sticking into it with her own eyes, and her heart was still trembling. She raised her eyes and glanced at Zhou Man. Turning his head to talk to the Queen, "Where's the Emperor?" "Your Majesty is outside. Does the Queen Mother want to see His Majesty?" The Queen Mother sighed and said, "It's cold, and he's not very healthy." "What did he do when he ran out?" Man Bao thought while sticking the needle. Compared with the Queen Mother, the Emperor is considered a stalwart. Where is his health? The Queen is weaker than him. But the Queen Mother didn't think so. She said, "The cold at night is heavy, and he has old wounds on his body. Now he doesn't like to focus on himself, and it will hurt again. There is an imperial doctor here, and I feel much better. You and the Emperor go back to rest." "Go ahead." But the Queen said, "The Queen Mother is relieved. There is a brazier in the palace, and the palace staff will serve your Majesty well, but it is you, your Majesty hears that you are ill and can't sit still for a moment. Even worse." The Queen Mother frowned, and sighed after a while, "Forget it, let someone clean up the conservatory next to him and let him lie down in it. There is a sacrifice in the winter festival. He is busy, don't be tired." "On." The Queen responded, then glanced at the palace maid, and the palace maid led the order to go out and spread the word. The Queen Mother and the Queen were speechless. When she turned her head, she saw that Zhou Man had twisted a longer needle into her body, and the Queen Mother's heart trembled again, so she could only continue to look away, looking for something to talk to Zhou Man. Prince are the concubine and the little Emperor in good health." Zhou Man was stunned for a moment before realizing that this was a question for her, and nodded quickly, "It's good." The Empress Dowager sighed, "Ijia has only seen the little Emperor's grandson once. The little Emperor was still young, and it was cold outside. Not to mention the East Palace, even the Crown Princess's main courtyard had never been out. The Queen Mother only saw the child once after the third wash, and she went to see it in person." Although Man Bao was not familiar with the Queen Mother, he was always familiar with his speech, so he said while sticking a needle, "It's all right, I'll see you when the Empress is well." The Queen Mother glanced at her and said nothing. The Queen has already said angrily, "Silly child, the Queen Mother is an elder, how can the little Emperor let the Queen Mother go to see him? Mother, when you are well, I will ask the Crown Princess to bring the child to show you." The Queen Mother shook her head and said, "Forget it, I've been taking medicine here. I'm careful to give him the sickness. It's cold outside. He's too young to move, so let the princess take it with me." The grandmother on the side jokingly said, "The little Emperor is only 2 years old after the New Year, and maybe he also misses his great-grandmother." Man Bao's hand that twisted the needle couldn't help but looked up at Mammy in surprise. The little Emperor, who was only 1 month and a day old, kicked his legs in his sleep, not knowing that he would be 2 years old in just over a month. See you at 6 p.m.